pretty heavy. A situation brought to us by a listener, a veteran named Nicole Wyman.
That's right. We've got documents here from an organization called Internity about her case, and also Nicole's own notes detailing her experiences.
Yeah, quite a bit of material. So our aim here is really to understand what Nicole is alleging, what evidence is presented, and, what the bigger picture might be.
Exactly. Trying to pull out the key insights, understand the significance of all this information. It's complex.
Okay, let's start at the beginning then, the initial allegations. So Nicole Wyman, she's a veteran, a survivor of military sexual assault.
In important context, she has some pre-existing conditions, TBI, a history with substance abuse.
Right. So in 2018, she goes seeking treatment at the Togus VA facility up in Maine.
And that's where her treatment relationship starts with Dawn Hastings, who was a nurse practitioner there.
Now, Nicole does state, and we should be clear about this, that she made an inappropriate comment early on.
Yes, she acknowledges that and says she apologized for it, but it's what happens after that, where the serious concerns begin to surface.
Definitely. Nicole talks about a real shift in Hastings' behavior. Things like changes to appointment times.
Yeah, apparently scheduling them late in the day, maybe implying perks or special treatment, that kind of thing.
And also accepting personal gifts. Chocolate cherries, I think, in 2018.
And a coffee cup, 2019. Accepting gifts in a therapeutic setting, it's tricky. It can blur boundaries.
Professional guidelines usually advise against it, right?
Yeah.
Keep things objective.
Absolutely. It can impact the power dynamic, compromise the care.
Nicole also mentioned an increase in what she felt was overly friendly contact. Hastings initiating chats in the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
And she alleges Hastings started dressing, in Nicole's view, provocatively during their sessions.
Okay. And adding another layer, there's an allegation about how Hastings represented her qualifications.
Yes, that after getting her PhD, Hastings presented herself as a doctor.
And Nicole says another staff member, Kathy Russin, actually told her, address her as doctor.
Which sort of implies an official okay for that title.
It raises questions about transparency, definitely. Patients need to know who they're talking to, what their provider's actual qualifications are. It's fundamental trust.
So Nicole felt things were off. She tried reporting these concerns
to Dr. Greenleaf and also the patient advocate, Angela McKinney.
But her feeling was she didn't get the help she needed, that the facility wasn't really addressing it.
That feeling of, hitting a wall when you try to report something within the system. It's a theme we unfortunately hear about sometimes.
It must be incredibly discouraging.
Massively. And we see she also turned to social media, talking to peers, maybe trying to figure out if others had similar experiences.
But then things seem to have escalated quite dramatically.
Yeah, the situation apparently moved beyond the clinic walls. Nicole reported being stalked off VHA property.
By Hastings, and also Hastings' adult daughter, Billy Stone. That's the allegation.
That's a very serious claim. Stalking allegations following a report of misconduct, that really raises the stakes. It can definitely create a climate of fear.
And then there's the protection order.
Right. The allegation is that Hastings and Stone used Nicole's own social media posts.
The ones where she was talking about her experiences.
Exactly. Used those posts to get a protection from harassment order against Nicole.
Which effectively stopped her from talking about them publicly, right?
That's the implication. The concern is whether a legal tool was used, essentially, to silence her complaints about her healthcare experience. It touches on freedom of speech.
And perhaps the most impactful allegation, maybe the most damaging, because she reported these issues, because she advocated for herself.
She alleges she was flagged as disruptive by the Togus Disruptive Behavior Committee.
Wow. And what does that mean, practically?
Well, these flags are meant for safety risks, generally. But the concern here is punitive use. For Nicole, it reportedly meant she had to check in with VA police every time she went to the facility.
Okay, that's already a hurdle.
A big one. But even more alarming, she says she was denied access to emergency care there because of this flag.
Denied emergency care. As a veteran at a VA facility.
Yeah, that's the allegation. It's deeply troubling if true. Mm-hmm. Access to emergency medical care is fundamental.
So Internity looked into all this. They reviewed her documents, social media, the court order, VHA records.
Right, a comprehensive review. They even contacted the law firm involved with the protection order, Baldacci Law.
And what did the lawyers say?
They apparently noted the order was heavily defended, which is interesting phrasing, and suggested Nicole contact the Veterans Legal Initiative.
But Internity's conclusion wasn't just about Nicole's specific case, was it?
No, they took it further. They argue that what Nicole describes isn't just an isolated incident.
They see it as potentially indicative of what was the phrase? A widespread cultural problem within VHA facilities.
That's a strong claim, and they tried to back it up with other examples. Well, there was a report cited from a House aide about an alleged assault between veterans at the VADC. The allegation there was that VHA staff witnessed it but didn't intervene. That was in the New York Times.
Okay. Any others?
Yeah, a news report from WBTV about a VHA employee allegedly being sexually harassed by a coworker. And again, the supervisor allegedly didn't step in.
So, instances of alleged inaction or failure to protect.
Seems to be the pattern they're highlighting. They also mentioned the VHA's official stance.
Which is?
There's a formal position statement on sexual harassment of patients and staff. Zero tolerance, commitment to safety. The official policy is clear.
But the example suggests a gap between policy and practice, maybe.
That's what Eternity seems to imply.
Yeah.
They even pulled specific, though anonymized, comments from the VA's own blog, va.gov.
Really? Like what?
There's one from Ronald Pitson talking about being sexually harassed by a male nurse in Biloxi. He reported it and was allegedly told they'd just have a chat with the nurse. That's it.
Just a chat.
Apparently. And another one, Brian, described an alleged sexual assault by a male mental health counselor in Louisville. Filed a formal complaint, but reported no action taken by the VA.
Those first-hand accounts, they carry a lot of weight, don't they?
They do. They paint a picture that seems quite different from the official policy statements.
Eternity also connected this to other work, didn't they? Something about retaliation.
Yes, they referenced findings by an attorney, Ben Krause, and a national investigative report. Both apparently looked into retaliation against veterans, particularly sick veterans, who raised concerns or complaints, suggesting a potential pattern.
So putting it all together, what was Eternity's overall assessment?
It's pretty stark. They suggest the evidence points to possibilities of sexual harassment, serious ethics violations, professional misconduct,
Okay.
retaliation for whistleblowing, maybe even constitutional rights violations like First and Fourth Amendment issues.
Yeah.
And critically, that all of this likely worsened Nicole's existing mental health conditions, potentially re-traumatizing her.
Given that assessment, what did they recommend? What are the proposed next steps?
They laid out a few key actions. First, submit a confidential report detailing everything.
To who?
To the Tokus VA Director, Ryan Lilly, also the Maine VA Office of Inspector General, and Maine state legislators.
And asking for
Congressional oversight and specific whistleblower protections for Nicole. They also recommended filing a formal complaint with the state licensing board.
for Hastings?
For Hastings, yes. The Maine Board of Nurse Practitioners and Medical Oversight. That's the body that handles professional conduct for nurses.
Makes sense. Anything else?
A big one. Try to set up a meeting between Nicole and the Togus VA director
For what purpose?
to specifically request that the disruptive behavior flag be removed from her record, to clear the way for her to get care without that barrier.
That seems crucial.
Absolutely. And finally, Eternity provided contact info for the VA's own Office of Accountability and Whistleblower Protection, a resource for veterans facing these kinds of issues.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly to Nicole's own account, her personal notes. First, her background. She served in the Navy.
Yeah, U.S. Navy 1992 to 1999, reached E5 rank, honorably served.
And during that service, she experienced trauma.
Yes, unfortunately. Both sexual harassment and a physical injury from a commander. It went to court-martial.
What happened?
The commander faced 13 guilty charges, apparently, and received a dishonorable discharge. So a history of military sexual trauma there, which is important context for her later VA experiences.
And she documented her more recent experiences. How?
She used TikTok, actually, from around October 2024 through February 2025, posting videos, creating sort of a running commentary or record of what was happening from her perspective.
And her written notes give more detail on specific allegations against Hastings.
Yes. For instance, she mentions filing a VA hotline complaint back in 2019 or maybe 2020.
About what specifically?
Oh, Hastings allegedly bragging about being a physician. Basically, the qualification issue again.
And the patient advocate was notified about that complaint.
Reportedly, yes. But what Nicole claims happened immediately after is, well, alarming.
Retaliation.
Direct retaliation, according to her account.
Mm.
She alleges Hastings then falsified a VAMC police report,
Falsified a police report accusing Nicole of what?
accusing Nicole of stalking, harassment, bullying, intimidation, essentially turning the tables.
And that falsified report was then used
To request the restraining order against Nicole. That's the sequence she lays out.
And you mentioned something the VAMC police noted.
Yes, in their findings related to this, they reportedly noted that Nicole was experiencing suicidal ideation at the time, which just underscores the immense distress she was under.
Understandably, she feels her reputation has been damaged by all this.
She states it's been destroyed in the New England area, professionally, personally.
And there's a really serious tech-related allegation, too, about hacking.
Yes, this one's quite shocking. She alleges Hastings gained access to her iCloud account.
Unauthorized access.
Unauthorized access, and repeatedly hacked it, even after Nicole reset her security measures.
Why? What was the alleged purpose?
Nicole believes it might have been to delete notes, potentially evidence, from her Evernote app.
That's incredibly serious, if true. Violation of privacy, potential destruction of evidence.
Grave accusations, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it feeds into her fear for her safety.
She mentions feeling unsafe.
Very much so. Constant alleged stalking by Hastings. She even mentions filing multiple robbery reports with local police that she thinks are connected, part of the harassment, but feels they weren't taken seriously.
That feeling of being watched, potentially targeted, and not getting help, it sounds terrifying.
Creates a profound sense of vulnerability. And then there are allegations about Hastings' past.
Well, kind of allegation.
These are disturbing. Nicole claims Hastings has a history, alleged prior imprisonment for assault, a parole violation for stalking at a previous workplace, Maine general mental health.
Where did Nicole hear this?
She states Dr. Greenleaf told her some of this, specifically that Hastings was allegedly fired from a prior job for similar stalking-related reasons.
If any of that is true, it raises huge questions about hiring, background checks, oversight.
Huge questions about how someone with that alleged history could be in a position of care.
Nicole also alleges direct property damage.
Yes, vandalism to her car. And she says she has recorded evidence of it.
And Hastings' daughter, Billy Stone, is implicated again.
Yes, Nicole alleges Stone was involved in the vandalism and also in online harassment.
What kind of online harassment?
Specific examples were given, like someone creating a fake Facebook profile using Nicole's old name.
Okay.
And that profile then added a restaurant Nicole had just been to. Very targeted, creepy stuff.
Definitely sounds targeted.
And also threatening messages allegedly sent via Facebook Messenger from Billy Stone's account.
So it's a picture of persistent harassment, both online and offline, according to Nicole.
That's certainly the picture painted by her account and the supporting documents she provided. A deliberate campaign, as she perceived it.
Okay, so stepping back, this deep dive into the Eternity Info and Nicole Wyman's own accounts. It's a lot. It's complex and deeply concerning.
It really is. You have these very specific, serious individual allegations, the harassment, the retaliation claims. Those alone are significant.
But it's also the context, right? What Eternity suggested about broader issues.
Exactly. That's the other crucial layer. The potential for systemic problems within the VHA, suggested by these other examples and patterns. It demands a closer look.
It feels like all these threads are connected. Her personal story, the alleged problems with reporting and getting support.
And this possibility of a wider cultural issue in VA facilities. Understanding how these pieces fit together based on the documentation is really key. It impacts not just Nicole, but potentially many other veterans.
So as we wrap this up, maybe the question for you, the listener, to think about is this. Looking at all the information presented here, what kind of changes, maybe fundamental shifts, might be needed to make sure healthcare environments are genuinely safe and supportive for all veterans?
It's a big question. We encourage you to mull over the details, maybe look into some of the resources mentioned if this concerns you, and just think critically about the very serious issues Nicole's case raises.